Good morning, everybody. This is Walk the Dog with Riot Mort, and it is Friday, July 4th. It's about 7:30. I slept in a little bit today. It's the 4th of July. I'm allowed. But now we're starting our day, and it's the day where everyone gets to blow stuff up and light stuff on fire and celebrate America. America. That's right. So, it's nice, actually. Hilariously enough, back when I was, when we lived in Washington working at Nintendo, Bothell was outside the city limits for Seattle. So we would actually be able to do fireworks in our driveway, and it was kind of a fun thing for the kids growing up. But then you move to California, and it's illegal. Now, I say illegal because we never did it because it was illegal, but you'd have neighbors doing it, and you'd have people doing it all over the street. We would just walk out on our backyard and look out and yep, there's people lighting fireworks everywhere. That sure is how it went down. But now we're back, and technically we could light fireworks. But we haven't really done that in years, so we'll see. So anyway, happy Friday. I ranted yesterday and didn't answer questions, which means today I should answer questions. It's pretty wild, by the way. We are a week away from Worlds, which is pretty crazy. Feels, I don't know, the schedule's going fast. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm in this transition period between projects, but it's oh yeah, Worlds is in a week, which means the next set will be on PBE pretty shortly after. So yeah, I thought the learnings article was supposed to come out this week. I'll have to go check. Maybe it's early next week or something. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, I'll be streaming tomorrow though, so we'll be continuing that, and then the weekend after that I will be co-streaming Worlds, so that'll be fun again. Just do the little solo thing where we have a viewer or a what's it called, spectator client, and be able to watch, and so that'll be fun. We'll enjoy that. Okay, let's answer questions. Okay, first question. What is your opinion on this whole Stop Killing Games initiative? So this is not going to be a spicy take because my opinion's pretty standard and safe, in the sense that at the highest level, in theory, the concept of Stop Killing Games is good, right? The example that people always use is The Crew, right? Where it was this game that required online, and then EA or whoever decided, okay, we're done with it, so it's turned off, and no one can ever play it ever again. And there should be a way to make sure that we can play that, especially for a company that's still around. Find a way to switch it to that it's playable. In theory, I agree with that, right? Because that's lame, especially, you were excited for The Crew, you paid $60 when it came out, you've got this game, you'd love to play it. It makes sense, right? That being said, I think what's happened is twofold. One is that I think the details, Stop Killing Games, is too broad. It's sort of well, what does this mean for every game? What happens if a company, let's say an indie company, makes a game that requires a server, and then that company goes bankrupt? Do they have to figure out a way to make that work? Is that possible? Would they have no money? That's a weird case. Or what about game modes, right? The Odyssey game mode. Does that need to be continued and be able to be played? Does that count? Or is it just games in general? Because if it's not modes, well, maybe then, because people are evil, what'll happen is, let's take The Crew. You'll have a training mode that requires no offline, and then the main game that requires online. And they'll be no, the training mode still works offline. You can play your game. It's just one of the modes isn't available, the core mode, right? The thing about rules, and I say this as a game designer, is that anytime someone makes rules, there's always going to be a jerk out there that exploits those rules for their benefit. and manipulates things. So it's so broad that I feel like it's not going to accomplish anything. Like, people are like, oh, this is the shining bullet that will change the industry. It's like, no, I don't think it will. I think, it's a cool moment where gamers come together and kind of go, yeah, this is a little bullshit. And if there's any companies out there that actually care about their players and want to make games good, they'll, do this kind of stuff. There was a game recently, I can't remember the name of it, but I know there was a game that was sort of like, hey, we're closing this game, but we know that kind of sucks, so we're going to make sure the game's playable and peace out, and it's like, that makes sense. That's cool. They kept their reputation. I think that's a good thing. And then for every one of those, there's an Ubisoft that's going to be like, nah, game's dead, bye. And so again, in theory, makes sense. Now, the weird part here is where this gets all perverse, is that somehow this turned into like some weird internet thing where someone like Pirate took it like way too far. And this is why generally, even I've learned this because I've been guilty of this sometimes in the past, is that like overreacting with strong negative words when you don't understand something is not really the best approach. But also like YouTubers saying like, everyone needs to stop killing games, it'll save the gaming industry. It's like, no, it won't. That's not how it works, So now, and again, I come off a bit of a negative Nancy here because it's like, people feel helpless, and so they want to take action, and this feels like an action they can take to the cause that they care deeply about, right? Like, in theory, that's the way it's supposed to work, is that like, we take action and things get better. I'm just, especially when it comes to politics, not really a believer in things actually accomplishing or getting done. So, because these are the same YouTubers that like, anytime there was a post about how loot boxes were going to be a problem and there were going to be laws to stop all the loot boxes and, oh my God, this will solve it's like, fast forward, where are we at? Loot boxes are still fine. The only thing that changed is like, you have to put the odds on them, which like, good, cool. But, and then what happened is we just changed the systems, So it's one of those things where like, it's in a YouTuber's best interest to make it as loud and dramatic as possible to get themselves views for their viewership. But the reality is much more mundane and much simpler. And it doesn't actually end up meaning anything. And like I said, I go back to all the loot box drama and all how everything will get solved, and like nothing changed except the YouTubers got their views. They sure did get their views, and they riled up their audience. So it's a weird situation. Again, me as a developer, the simple thing here is like, it'd be nice if games were playable. Oh, that's the other line. Is it just playable? Or is it acquirable? As someone who worked on a game, or a climber, that right now, I mean, I can play it because it's on my 3DS, but I can't acquire it. If I was like, hey, friend, I would love to show you Aura Climber. Go buy Aura Climber. You can't buy it. Now, I'm sure there's some ROM out there. I actually kind of pray there is. But yeah, so that's kind of my opinion. It's like, it's one of those things that's like not that big a deal. Game devs should just do the right thing. I don't think it's going to change anything. I think it's being made out to be a bigger deal than it is. And I think it's revealing some stubbornness and some personalities. So, yeah. And hilariously enough now, because I looked into this a little bit, now my YouTube algorithm keeps feeding me all these influencers, and I use air quotes, keeps feeding me all these influencers who are talking about it. And it's like, they all just kind of regurgitate the same points, which is that big mean guy said he didn't like it, but gaming companies shouldn't do it, so we should sign it. Like, it's an oversimplification. So I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents. Like I said, not that spicy. So there you go. Speaking of which, next question. How do you deal with negativity? So this has been asked a couple times before, and it's come up, and it's a hard one. There was some lady who came to Riot and actually gave a talk about this, and the reality is, especially for high performers or people who care what other people think, it takes 10 positive comments to outweigh one negative comment, right? If someone comes to you and says, holy cow, your work is crap, and then one other person says, hey, your work's pretty good, those are not equal. Negativity festers. And unfortunately in this world, there's a lot of negativity to go around. There is a lot. Now, some people are blessed with the benefit of being able to go, I don't care that much, right? I know a couple coworkers who literally just do not care. That's just like, they just go about their business in their day, and all they care about is like them and moving forward. And yeah, it's must be nice to be them. But for those of us who do care, it can feel pretty bad. And I think it's funny because you can compartmentalize it sometimes. Like, for example, for me, when I get the random nameless Twitter account that has 3 followers, or the random Reddit account that's random word dash 5-digit number, who has posted 20 negative things about how I'm bad at my job, I'm just like, whatever. I actually don't mind that so much. That's just an idiot being an idiot. Generally, not a big deal. But where it can really suck is when the negativity comes from people that you thought you'd established trust with, right? So imagine if your parents, and this is not me, I'm just using this as an example, but let's say your parents came down on you and were like, wow, you're terrible at school. Or your family came down on you and was like, wow, your hobbies are stupid, right? Like, that can feel really, really bad. In my case, what I'll say is, players that you've talked to for 5 years in TFT and built up a rep. And I'll just say this, for me, the straw that broke the camel's back was watching Froden's patch rundown, that one patch, and watching, I won't say who it was, but you can figure it out. Watching a high-level player in that chat just go, wow, the balance team has no idea what they're doing. And it's like, not only did we know what we were doing because the person calling out the change that they didn't like ended up being correct, but 2, the fact that this person felt the need to be that negative is sort of like, I kind of lost my shit a little bit. It's like, then why am I doing this? But that's not your question. Your question is not like there is negative. Your question is, how do you deal with it? And the answer is, you have to centralize yourself on what your goals are and what you want to do to move forward. So, for example, in my case, my goal is to make good TFT content and to make the game good. As long as I'm doing those things, I don't really care what a person says because I know I'm doing the right thing, And at this point, if somebody tells me it took me a bit to think about this, but if somebody came up to me and says, Mort, you have no idea what you're doing and you're a bad designer, right? At this point, I can say factually, this isn't subjective, like factually, this is just incorrect, right? Like, this person is just incorrect, and I can ignore that opinion. You know, so let's say, for example, you are somebody who really enjoys TFT, and you play TFT, and someone comes up to you and says, you're wasting your time with that stupid game, right? Like, you can choose to listen to that and go, maybe this person's right, or you can centralize yourself and sort of go, everybody has something they spend fun time on. I've chosen to make that thing TFT. It's fun to me. I'm still getting all my stuff done in life. Therefore, this person is wrong. And that's okay, right? Like, you know, and so it's like, I'll use another random example. Let's say you're Frodan and you're doing your stream and you're making your content, and some random chatter comes in and says you're bad at TFT. It's like, you can go, wow, that feels bad. Or you can go, hey, my goal is not to be rank 1 TFT. My goal is to be good at TFT and create content for people to enjoy TFT. And so this person's opinion doesn't matter, right? And that's been my best way of filtering negativity, is just sort of going, look, your negativity is irrelevant, right? Another hilarious example is like when people come to my chat and they're like, lol, 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 Mort's fat. And it's like, yeah, maybe I am fat. But you know what? I also have a wife and kids, and I'm happy, and life is good. So, you know, if I am fat, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do, right? So that's kind of been my method for dealing with negativity. But the other thing too, like I said, is this is just a world right now where negativity is just everywhere. People are taking out their insecurities on the world and being negative to elicit reaction. This is especially true of Twitch chat, you know, where hate watching has become a thing, or saying you like someone is cringe. Apparently glazing is cringe. You're not allowed to say you like things, which is so freaking weird. It's so freaking weird, this weird culture. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I am thankful that my Twitch chat is not really like this. Even when Soju's not streaming, it's been kind of nice. I think bullying the Soju streamers out of our stream has kind of been kind of nice. But yeah. So there you go. Kind of my answer. But generally, try not to worry too much about it and just move forward in your own life and do good things. So, all right. Next question is a long one. I think it might be the last one, but this person was asking about the future of TFT, and they wrote a really long question with 3 parts. I can't read back the whole question, but they were basically like, what's the future of TFT look like? And they were asking about, like, hey, we've talked about how we're at the complexity limit. Would we ever remove things? The lack of competition in the industry, is that a problem? And then the game requires a lot of changes to stay active. How do we innovate? How do we keep that going? So this is a long question. And there's a lot to break down here. So first off, the future of TFT, the way I look at the future of TFT, at least, is that it's a space that has a core, which is build a team and have your team fight other people's teams based on the resources you've been given, right? At that high level, I don't think there's a lot to change. I think that core needs to stay the way it is to be successful. Cool. Now, the rules around that core, though, that's where I think we can innovate, and we can innovate a lot, right? What does it take to build your army? How many resources do you have to build the army? What defines building your army, right? Is it items? Is it anomalies? Is it something else? Is it a new thing, right? Dumb example, but like, we've made a new mechanic where hats and everyone gets a hat. Okay, great. Like, that's a new mechanic, right? Like, we can add things, we can take away things, we can adjust things, right? First there's augments, then there's dual augments and hero augments, and maybe now there's not augments, maybe there's a new thing, maybe there's 1v2 augments, like, there's enough mutations on the core parameters that I think we have a lot of room to go. And I've talked about this before, but this is where I always say, like, compare to Magic the Gathering and some of the things they've tried in the 30 years, right? Like, you go back and look at some of the Magic cards there are, and it's like, hell, even back when I was playing originally, at one point they released cards that were 2 cards on one, not front and back, but like 2 mini cards that you could play either one, right? Like an example was like, there was a red and blue one, and the red one was deal some damage, and the blue one was counter a spell. And it's like, well, you could play either. And it's like, well, that's kind of cool. So we can do stuff like that. We can make new types of units. We can make new types of items. We can make new types of things. Like, I think there's a lot of space still left to innovate. And when I say we're at the complexity ceiling, what I'm saying is we just have to be careful that we can't just add and add and add and add, right? Like, for example, if you're trying to play Magic the Gathering and you're playing with every card in existence, that is too much. I pulled up Magic Arena recently, and they'll randomly give you cards from other sets. And I'm looking, and I see these keywords. I'm just like, I have no idea what that keyword means. I don't know what this does. There was one that was like, solve a case. And I was like, the hell is a case? I have no idea. Or you become the monarch. And I was like, what is the monarch? I don't know what that means. And so Magic the Gathering as a whole is too much. But what I will say is I've been playing a lot of like just the Final Fantasy draft. And the Final Fantasy set contained within itself, nice, solid experience with cool things in it. Right? And that's where I think TFT sets need to be, is like, I don't need to know what every anomaly is and charms are and things like that for every set. But when a set comes around that has anomaly in it, like set 13, it's like, oh, this is cool. I don't mind playing with this, And I think that's closer to where we need to be, is that every set, self-contained within itself, is a fun, solid experience that's approachable and learnable. And I think as long as we do that, the complexity ceiling won't be broken, right? It's just not adding to it over and over and over. So then if we had some really cool idea, like let's say we had a really cool mechanic that was an alteration of something like augments. Could we remove augments? Yeah, sure. But I imagine if we removed augments, it would be like for something that's really, really close to augments, So it'd almost be like different flavor of augments. If augments are the frosting on the cake, we can make different types of frosting. But I still don't think you want a frostingless cake, I think is the way I would put it. So now the second part of your question was, how do we feel about lack of competition? Now, this is one that if you had asked me in the first 2 years of TFT development, I would have been like, this is hard. This is really, really hard because we're still learning about the genre. We're making mistakes. We're making things like shadow items, and we're screwing up here and there. And there wasn't anywhere to look for the answers, right? I can, if I was making a CCG right now, it's like there are so many CCGs out there that you can sort of look and go, here's what worked, here's what didn't. Here's, I remember, God, it was 1997? I remember playing a baseball CCG where you would buy cards that were essentially baseball cards, and then there was a whole game where you could like play a baseball game. Like there are so many CCGs you can reference and look up and learn from and sort of go, okay. Now, part of that makes it challenging too, right? It's like, how do you innovate in a space that's so dry? But the same is true as if you're making a platformer right now or a turn-based RPG, right? How did Expedition 33 innovate? Well, it's like they kind of took Persona, and they've admitted this in their interviews. It's like, we want Persona-style menus with Dark Souls style combat. Cool. Great. That's a success. TFT doesn't have that, right? We don't have anyone to compete with. But to me, now the positive is, like I said, I am probably the world's foremost expert in developing the auto battler genre. I can tell you what works, what doesn't work, how things play out. And that's a cool feeling. That's a cool feeling to kind of be the world's expert on something. And I know enough about the space now that I'm not sure I could really learn much from anything else. And in fact, so far, what I've seen is every competitor has tried to do different things in the space. There's been some attempts, but like I look at the game really quick and I sort of go, oh, here's what's going to happen. And then it does. And I'm like, sweet, this validates that I know what I'm talking about. Let me give you an example. There was one, this was like a year or two ago. I won't name it. I don't want to throw it under the bus. But essentially, they were a TFT-like game, an auto battler. But their whole premise was, hey, the way we're going to be successful is TFT is 40 minutes. Those games are long. We're going to be short. We're going to make sure our games are short and accessible and quick. And that's going to be the goal. And I went, cool, makes sense. I could see why you'd think that. But here's the challenge. The reason TFT is successful is it is deep, right? Within any given game, there are a glorious amounts of quintillion combinations of things you can do. And, even within those, it's going to get solved pretty quick. So you need that level of depth. And at any particular moment, there's room to skill express, which removes some of the random variance, right? Because the game has randomness to it. And so with that skill expression, you feel like you can get better at it, you can conquer it, you can improve, and that keeps people engaged, going, ooh, I want to try this thing I've never seen before, or I want to try to get better at this one comp that I really like. There's enough depth there that it's worth it. When you shrink that down to a 10 to 15 minute experience, you lose that depth, because all of a sudden, we've talked about this before, that like the number of random outcomes, if that number's so high, each individual random outcome doesn't matter as much. And you can see this in a game like Hearthstone Battlegrounds, where there are less total random decisions, but each one is far more impactful. And so when you lose to a random decision, like who attacked first, it feels like crap. And so there's that. And so then it's a combination of and because the game's so much smaller and simpler, it will get solved infinitely faster. And when it's solved, players are going to go, I get it, I'm bored, and I'm out. Well, fast forward, guess what happened? Game comes out, 2 weeks later, everyone knows this thing is the best, and they can do light balance changes, but every time they did balance changes, it was like a day later, this thing is the best. And that company had to learn that balance has to be super tight in a game space like this, something I've known for years now. And then players got bored because you can also plow through a bunch of games really quick. And then because it's not that deep, players moved on. It's like, oh, this is just less deep TFT. No thanks, I'm good. And they moved on. And it's like, yep, called it, right? That's how it works. We know this. But someone who didn't know this and was just looking at TFT kind of going, we can do that, didn't really understand. And this is a problem with the industry, kind of like I talked about yesterday, right? Where it's like people think they can just copy someone else's homework, but they don't really understand the research it took to get there. And then they turn in their project and it's not as good. And that's kind of where I'm at with auto battlers. It's like people can copy us all day long, but they're behind on 5 years of learnings. So now I'm not so arrogant to think that someone might not find unique innovations within the space, so I'd still at least check on a lot of our competitors that will crop up and be like, cool, what are you doing that's different? How would I expect it to play out? Is there something really unique here? And there are. I can think of at least 2 times in the last year where someone above me, like Medler, will be like, hey, the way this game does this one thing is really, really cool. We should consider that. It's like, oh yeah, that is kind of neat, you know. But a single element does not necessarily mean like the game is now going to be better than us. It's more like, oh, that's cool. There was a unique thing within that space. So yeah, the lack of competitors, I'm not too worried about. And then the last part was the lots of changes. Now that's another one where, remember how I told you my specialty is like getting something done quick and efficiently? I think that has allowed us, none of our sets have ever missed a deadline, right? Like we get our stuff out the door. It's generally pretty high quality, not every game company can do that. And it requires a pretty significant investment. And the fact that we were able to even speed that up and go to 4 sets a year, 3 sets a year. I can't count. 3 sets a year is like a big deal, right? Like 3 sets a year. And not to mention, in addition to the 3 sets a year, we have like set revivals and game modes. It's like we can do it. So if you're going to truly compete with TFT and keep your auto battler fresh, you've got to be able to deliver content on that pace. And that's another one of the hardest things in the industry is like games like Fortnite, Genshin, TFT are essentially content treadmills, right? It's like whether it be a set or a game mode or an event or a new character or whatever, you have to just keep pumping out that content. And so if your game isn't ready to match that same content desire, you're going to fall behind very, very quickly. So, yeah. So TLDR here. I think TFT has a long future. I'm not too worried about it. We're on top and we're so far ahead that as long as we don't, like, the way we fail is we get cocky and arrogant and rest on our laurels and go, yeah, we can just make the same set over and over. No problem. Which isn't true. We still have to innovate. We still have to make things better. We still have to improve constantly. But as long as we do that, and I'm confident we're going to keep doing that, we'll be fine. So, all right, we're at 32 minutes. I'm already longer than I normally am. Hopefully these were good questions. I've got stream this weekend. And then Monday I start the new work. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. All right, see you guys tomorrow for stream. That's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.